The room quieted as Laine's presentation concluded. She gathered her notes, expecting the usual polite nods from the executive team. Instead, Thea Archer, the newly appointed director, cleared her throat deliberately. "That was informative," Thea said, her voice carrying a dangerous pleasantness. "But before we dismiss, there's something we need to address." Laine froze halfway into her seat. The air shifted as 12 colleagues suddenly found the conference table fascinating. "We've been reviewing everyone's contributions since the merger," Thea continued, gesturing to a spreadsheet projected on the wall. "Your numbers are consistently below our new benchmarks." Laine's throat tightened. "I focus on client relationships rather than, yes, the relationship approach," Thea interrupted with a dismissive wave. "Very old school. The problem is, we simply don't see the value you're bringing to the team anymore." The words struck like a physical blow. 3 years of dedicated work reduced to a dismissive assessment in front of everyone she worked with daily. "Your position costs this firm considerably," Thea continued, her smile never reaching her eyes. "And, frankly, we're questioning if it justifies its compensation package." Laine's colleagues shifted uncomfortably. No one would meet her gaze. She recognized this strategy, public humiliation designed to make resignations seem like the only option. "Perhaps," Thea added, glancing pointedly at her tablet, "you'd like to share with everyone what exactly you've contributed this quarter. Help us understand what we're missing?" The question hung in the air, deliberately cruel, designed to highlight what Thea had already decided was failure. The meeting room felt suddenly too warm, too small, too exposed. Something within Laine shifted. Not anger, though that simmered beneath, but a cold clarity. She'd watched for months as younger advisors with aggressive tactics received promotions while she quietly maintained the relationships keeping the firm profitable. "Actually," Laine said, her voice steadier than she felt, "I would." She opened her laptop, connected to the projector. Thea's eyebrow arched with surprise. Clearly, she'd expected tears or stammered excuses. "This is my client portfolio," Laine explained, displaying a meticulously organized spreadsheet. 14 accounts I've personally managed since joining this firm." Thea sighed dramatically. "Yes, we know you have clients. The issue is your acquisition numbers. These 14 accounts," Laine continued calmly, "generated 68% of this firm's total revenue last quarter." The air in the room changed instantly. "That's impossible," Thea whispered. Laine scrolled through the data. The Torres account alone brought in $1.2 million in fees. The Winters portfolio referred 3 new accounts worth $5 million each last year. Thea's assistant began frantically typing on her tablet, obviously fact-checking the claims. "These clients stay because of their relationship with me," Laine continued, reaching for her phone. "They've been calling me directly for years." She placed her phone on the table. "Would you like me to call them now? I can start with Mr. Kessler, who's considering moving his entire hedge fund to us. Or, perhaps Miss Irving, who's already messaged me twice today about market fluctuations." The assistant whispered something in Thea's ear. Her perfectly composed face faltered. "That won't be necessary," she said quickly. "I didn't think so." Laine closed her laptop. "My compensation package remains untouched. I continue working with my clients my way, and we never have this conversation again." She stood, gathering her materials. "Or, I make 14 calls tonight, and you explain to the board why 68% of your revenue stream disappeared overnight. If you're enjoying this story so far, take a quick second to hit that like button. Your support helps stories like this reach more people. Subscribe if you want more tales of workplace justice, and drop a comment about what you'd have done in Laine's position. Now, let's get back to what happened next. My name is Laine Harlow, and until 6 months ago, I loved my job at this financial advisory firm. Not the gleaming downtown offices or the prestigious address, but the work itself, helping people secure their futures, navigate complex financial waters, and sleep better at night knowing their money was working for them. I'm not what most people expect when they hear financial advisor. No power suits or aggressive sales tactics. Instead, I build trust. I remember clients' grandchildren's names and which ones are applying to college. I know who's caring for aging parents and who just started a risky new business venture. These details matter more than quarterly projections when you're handling someone's life savings. This approach made me an oddity among my colleagues, especially the newer crop who viewed clients as acquisition targets rather than people. But my methods worked. My client retention rate was near perfect in an industry where churning accounts is common. Then came the merger. I should have seen the warning signs immediately. The acquiring firm specialized in high-volume, aggressive sales tactics, the opposite of my approach. Their team arrived with slick presentations about modernizing our strategy and aggressive growth targets. Leading the charge was Thea Archer, brought in as our new director, tall, immaculately dressed, with a Harvard MBA and cutting efficiency. Thea represented everything the board thought we needed. She spoke in buzzwords and viewed the financial industry as a battlefield rather than a service. First quarter post-merger, she announced during her inaugural team meeting, we trimmed the fat. That meant performance reviews, new benchmarks, and a compensation structure rewarding new acquisitions over client maintenance. The message was clear: bring in fresh money or become expendable. I watched younger advisors adapt immediately. They extended their workdays, bombarded prospects with calls, and competed viciously for leads. Meanwhile, I continued my steady approach, spending hours on video calls with nervous clients as the market fluctuated wildly that spring. You're falling behind, my manager warned me 3 months in. Thea's watching the numbers closely. My clients are satisfied, I countered. Isn't that what matters? His expression told me everything. Not anymore. The cultural shift happened quickly. Conference rooms, once used for collaborative planning, became battlegrounds where advisors guarded their prospect lists jealously. Weekly meetings transformed into performance showcases where everyone highlighted their wins and minimized their struggles. Through it all, Thea watched with calculating eyes, marking those who would survive her new regime and those who wouldn't. I felt her assessment every time we crossed paths, measuring, evaluating, finding me lacking. I tried adapting. I scheduled more prospecting calls, created sleeker presentations, even bought a wardrobe that better matched the firm's new image. But my heart remained with my existing clients, especially as market volatility made them increasingly anxious. Laine, Mr. Torres told me during a particularly tense call, you're the only reason I haven't pulled everything out. These market conditions terrify me, but I trust you. His words stayed with me as I watched colleagues celebrate landing new accounts while neglecting their existing ones. I began tracking something no one else seemed to care about: which advisors were quietly losing clients even as they trumpeted new acquisitions. The data told a clear story. The firm was gaining new accounts but hemorrhaging established ones, except mine. My client base remained steady, their portfolios substantial, their loyalty unwavering. But these metrics weren't on Thea's dashboard. Until yesterday, when I received the calendar invitation. Performance review, all team members present. The subject line alone told me everything. Thea didn't conduct private performance reviews. She made examples of people. I spent the night preparing, gathering data, organizing numbers that told my story rather than hers. I barely slept, rehearsing what I would say when challenged, how I would defend my work without seeming defensive. What I hadn't prepared for was the cold satisfaction I'd feel watching Thea's confident expression crumble when confronted with reality. As I walked back to my office after the meeting, colleagues parted like water around a stone. No one spoke. No one met my eyes. They'd witnessed something they never expected. Someone standing up to Thea and winning. I closed my office door and sank into my chair, hands trembling with delayed adrenaline. My phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Torres, asking about a potential investment opportunity. Normal. Routine. Except nothing felt normal anymore. I had survived today's ambush, but I harbored no illusions. Thea wouldn't forget this public challenge. She wouldn't forgive it either. I had just made myself a target for something far worse than dismissal. The question wasn't if she would retaliate, but when and how destructive her response would be. My career, my reputation, my future in this industry, everything now balanced on the razor's edge of Thea Archer's wounded pride. And as I stared at the 14 client files open on my computer screen, I wondered if I had just made the biggest mistake of my professional life. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. The encounter with Thea had left me restless, and I wanted to prepare for whatever came next. The building was quiet, just cleaning staff and a few dedicated early risers. As I approached my office, I noticed something different. The nameplate beside my door now read, Executive Advisor. A promotion? Without discussion, I unlocked my door, finding a formal letter on my desk confirming the title change and a substantial compensation increase. What game is she playing? I muttered, scanning the document for hidden traps. My phone chimed with a message from Darren, our operations manager. Congratulations, heard about your promotion. Thea wants you in the executive meeting at 9. Executive meeting. where strategic decisions happened, where I'd never been invited before. When I entered the boardroom at 8:55, conversations hushed. Thea sat at the head of the table, surrounded by her inner circle. Her smile appeared genuine to anyone who hadn't been in yesterday's ambush. "Laine, join us." She gestured to an empty chair directly across from her. "We were just discussing the Miller acquisition." I settled into the seat, feeling every eye on me. The Miller Group was a prestigious client we'd been pursuing for months. Landing them would be a significant win. "We need someone to lead the presentation team," Thea continued. "Someone who understands relationship building. I think you're perfect for it." The offer was too good, too sudden. Yesterday she'd tried to humiliate me into quitting. Today she was handing me a career-defining opportunity. I felt the eyes of everyone at the table, watching for my reaction. "I'd need to understand the scope before committing," I replied carefully. "Of course," Thea nodded, seeming pleased with my caution. "We'll brief you fully. The presentation is in 2 weeks, plenty of time to prepare." As the meeting continued, I contributed cautiously, watching Thea for signs of her true intentions. She treated me with newfound respect, soliciting my opinions and nodding thoughtfully at my suggestions. The other executives followed her lead, incorporating me as if I'd always belonged. After the meeting, Mira, the marketing director who'd been with the firm for over a decade, caught up with me in the hallway. "That was strange," she murmured, keeping pace beside me. "Which part?" I asked. "Thea making you point person on Miller. She's been grooming Nash for that account for months." Nash Reed, Thea's protege, young, ambitious, with an aggressive approach that mirrored hers perfectly. If she'd promised him Miller, why would she change her mind? I wondered aloud. Mira shrugged. "Maybe yesterday scared her. Your client list represents too much revenue to lose. This could be her way of keeping you happy. Or setting me up to fail," I countered. Mira's silence was answer enough. Back in my office, I found another surprise, an email granting me access to the Miller file, including all previous communications and research. I spent hours poring over the materials, looking for hidden pitfalls. The Miller Group managed pension funds for several major unions, conservative investors prioritizing stability over aggressive returns. Perfect clients for my approach, terrible matches for Thea's high-risk strategies. As I reviewed past communications, something felt off. The notes from preliminary meetings suggested the Miller team was primarily concerned with ethical investment standards, yet our proposed strategy emphasized growth potential with minimal mention of ethical considerations. I was still puzzling over this discrepancy when Nash appeared in my doorway, his usually confident expression replaced with barely contained anger. "Congratulations on the Miller account," he said, voice tight. "Nash, I didn't ask for this assignment." "Doesn't matter. Thea says you're better suited." His tone made clear what he thought of that assessment. "I've been working this prospect for 4 months. Then help me understand them," I offered. "This should be a team effort." "Team?" He laughed sharply. "There's no team here anymore. There's Thea's vision, and everyone's scrambling to fit into it." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Watch yourself with Miller. Thea doesn't give opportunities. She gives tests, and failures are very public." He left before I could respond, his warning hanging in the air. Over the next week, I divided my time between my existing clients and preparing for the Miller presentation. Thea remained surprisingly supportive, approving my request for additional research and connecting me with resources across the firm. "You've got this," she assured me after reviewing my preliminary outline. "This is exactly why we need your perspective." Her words should have been reassuring. Instead, they heightened my suspicion. The more supportive she became, the more I questioned her motives. 10 days before the presentation, I received an invitation to join the executive team for dinner with the Miller decision-makers, an intimate gathering to build rapport before the formal pitch. "Business casual," Thea instructed when I asked about the dress code. "Keep it relaxed but professional." I arrived at the upscale restaurant 15 minutes early, wanting to gather myself before meeting the clients. The maitre d' guided me to a private dining room where Thea and 3 other executives were already seated with 5 people I assumed were from Miller. My step faltered as I entered. Every person in the room wore formal business attire, dark suits, crisp shirts, polished shoes. My business casual outfit, while perfectly appropriate for what Thea had described, made me immediately stand out as underdressed and unprepared. Thea's expression showed momentary surprise. "Laine, we were just discussing you. Come meet the Miller team." The introductions were gracious but cool. I felt their assessment as I shook hands around the table, saw the subtle exchange of glances that communicated their impression. "I apologize for my attire," I said directly. "There seems to have been a miscommunication about tonight's formality." "Not at all," said Vincent Miller, the founder's grandson and current CEO. "We appreciate authenticity over appearances." Yet throughout dinner, I felt the damage was done. I was marked as someone who hadn't done her homework, who didn't understand the client's expectations. When the conversation turned to investment philosophy, I focused on demonstrating my knowledge, emphasizing my understanding of their priorities. "You mention ethical investments," Vincent noted, "but your colleague Nash presented quite a different strategy, focused on maximizing returns through emerging markets." I nearly choked on my water. "Nash presented to you already?" Vincent nodded. "Last week, he had quite an impressive approach." Across the table, Thea watched me with that same pleasant expression, but her eyes held triumph. She'd never canceled Nash's presentation. She'd set up competing pitches and ensured I'd make a poor first impression tonight. Nash offered one perspective. I recovered quickly. "Our firm values diverse approaches. I'd be interested to hear which aspects of his presentation resonated with your team." The dinner concluded with polite handshakes and non-committal statements about looking forward to my formal presentation. As the Miller team departed, Thea lingered. "Unfortunate misunderstanding about the dress code," she said lightly. "I thought I'd been clear." "Crystal clear," I replied, maintaining my composure. "As was your decision to have Nash present separately, without informing me." Her smile tightened. "Nash took initiative. That's something we value. And setting up team members to fail? Is that something we value too?" For an instant, her mask slipped, revealing cold calculation. "Nobody's setting you up, Laine. But this is a competitive industry. The best ideas win. And the best manipulators," I countered, "they tend to go very far." She gathered her coat. "Your presentation is still scheduled. I suggest you make it count." After she left, I remained at the table, mind racing. The dinner, the dress code, Nash's secret presentation, all calculated moves in Thea's game. She wasn't trying to fire me anymore. She was orchestrating my failure to demonstrate her superiority. I had 9 days to prepare a presentation for clients who'd already heard a completely different pitch, who'd already seen me at a disadvantage, who might have already made their decision. My phone vibrated with a text from Mr. Torres. "Need to discuss market changes. Available tomorrow?" I stared at the message, a sudden realization dawning. My 14 key clients, the ones who represented 68% of the firm's revenue, they weren't just my protection. They were pieces on this chessboard too. And I'd been playing defense when I should have been strategizing my attack. I texted back, "Available tomorrow, and have something important to discuss with you as well." The game with Thea had evolved beyond mere professional survival. She wanted to prove I was dispensable despite my client list. I needed to prove something else entirely, something that would change the power dynamic permanently. As I gathered my things to leave, Vincent Miller unexpectedly returned to the dining room. "Miss Harlow, a moment?" I braced myself for more bad news. "That comment you made about ethical investments," he said quietly. "It's the first time anyone from your firm has addressed what's actually important to us. Everyone else keeps focusing on returns. Because returns matter," I acknowledged, "but not at the expense of your values." He studied me thoughtfully. "Nash's presentation was technically flawless, but it didn't acknowledge who we are. Your insight tonight, despite the circumstances, was more aligned with our needs." He handed me his business card with a personal number written on the back. "Call me before your presentation. I think we should talk privately first." As he left, I felt a shift in the air. The first hint that Thea's perfect strategy might have a flaw, one she couldn't have anticipated. The real battle wasn't going to be fought in a presentation room with slides and projections. It would be won or lost in the relationships I'd spent a career learning to build, and that Thea had spent her career learning to exploit. The next morning, I woke with newfound clarity. For months, I'd been playing defense, adapting to Thea's culture, trying to prove my worth in her metrics, reacting to her moves. That ended today. I called Vincent Miller before heading to the office, arranging to meet for coffee later that afternoon. Then, I reached out to Mr. Torres, confirming our meeting and requesting an additional favor that raised his eyebrows but earned his agreement. At the office, I maintained a deliberately calm exterior while executing the first phase of my plan. I spent the morning contacting each of my 14 key clients, ostensibly to provide quarterly updates. In reality, I was gathering ammunition. Mira found me in the break room around noon, her expression concerned. Something's happening with the Miller account, she whispered, checking to ensure we were alone. Thea's been in closed-door meetings all morning. The presentation might be moved up. When? I asked, keeping my voice level. Possibly Monday, 3 days from now instead of 9. I nodded, unsurprised. Thanks for the warning. Laine, she hesitated. Be careful. I've seen this pattern before. Thea identifies threats, neutralizes them, then discredits them so thoroughly they can never recover. You've worked with her before? Not directly, but I know 3 people from her previous firm. All experienced similar campaigns after challenging her. None still work in the industry. The gravity of her warning settled over me. This wasn't just about keeping my position. It was about preserving my entire career. What happened to them? I asked. Varied tactics, same result. One was framed for an ethics violation. Another was set up to make a catastrophic recommendation that cost a major client millions. The third, she paused. The third actually succeeded in exposing Thea's methods to the board. And Thea resigned with a generous severance package, then resurfaced at another firm 6 months later with glowing recommendations. The whistleblower, however, was blacklisted. No firm would touch them. I absorbed this information, adding it to my strategic calculation. Thea doesn't just eliminate opposition. She destroys it. Precisely. Mira checked her watch. I should go. I've said too much already. Why tell me at all? I asked as she turned to leave. She paused at the door. Because in 15 years, I've never seen anyone stand up to her like you did. Maybe you'll be the exception. After she left, I modified my timeline. If the presentation was being accelerated, I needed to accelerate my response. I sent a message to Mr. Torres, moving our meeting to that evening rather than the following day. My afternoon coffee with Vincent Miller proved enlightening in ways I hadn't anticipated. Your firm's pursuit of our business has been aggressive, he noted after preliminary pleasantries. 5 different presentations in 3 months, each promising better returns than the last. 5? I asked, genuinely surprised. I was only aware of Nash's and mine. Vincent nodded. Thea herself gave the first 2, then someone named Preston, then Nash last week, and now you. Preston was another of Thea's protégés. The pattern was becoming clear. She'd been directing multiple attempts at the Miller account, none coordinated with each other, all competing internally. That explains the inconsistency in approaches, I said carefully. May I ask what you're actually looking for from an advisory relationship? Vincent studied me for a moment before answering. My grandfather built this company on 2 principles: financial sustainability and ethical responsibility. Our current advisors focus exclusively on the former while neglecting the latter. And the presentations you've seen from our firm all emphasized aggressive growth strategies that would require us to abandon our commitment to ethical investing. More returns, less conscience. I nodded, understanding completely. Thea's growth at all costs mentality was fundamentally misaligned with what the Miller Group actually valued. What if I told you there's a way to honor both principles? I asked. Not as a compromise, but as complementary strategies. For the next hour, I outlined an approach centered on Vincent's actual priorities rather than Thea's presumptions. By the time we parted, he'd requested a complete proposal, not for his team, but for him personally, by the end of the week. Regardless of what happens with the formal presentation, he added, I want to see your vision specifically. Back at my apartment that evening, I prepared for my meeting with Mr. Torres. At 68, Fernando Torres had built his wealth through decades of careful investment in real estate and technology startups. More importantly, he'd become a mentor of sorts, regularly inviting me to industry events and introducing me to his extensive network. This isn't just about protecting your position, he observed after I explained the situation with Thea. This is about exposing a systemic problem within the firm. Exactly, I agreed. The issue isn't personal rivalry. It's about client welfare and ethical advisory practices. He nodded thoughtfully. And you're certain other clients have experienced similar concerns? I've spoken with 12 of my 14 key clients today. All reported being contacted by other advisors at the firm within the past month, all offering to review their portfolios or discuss new opportunities. They're trying to establish relationships that would survive my departure. Mr. Torres's expression darkened. Poaching attempts disguised as customer service. Precisely, but none of those advisors have our history or understand their specific needs. It's about claiming the accounts, not serving the clients. So what do you need from me? 2 things, I replied. First, your presence at a meeting I'm arranging for next Thursday. And second, your discretion until then. He agreed without hesitation. By the time he left, the framework of my plan was solidly in place. The next morning, Saturday, I should have been focused on preparing for Monday's potentially accelerated Miller presentation. Instead, I spent hours making calls to my remaining key clients, securing commitments for Thursday's meeting. By noon, all 14 had confirmed their participation, many expressing concern about the changes they'd observed since the merger. I was finalizing my notes when my phone rang, Thea's name flashing on the screen. "I'm glad I caught you," she said without preamble. "There's been a change to the Miller presentation. It's been moved to Monday morning." "I heard rumors," I replied calmly. "Any particular reason for the change?" Vincent Miller requested it specifically. He was apparently quite impressed with Nash's pitch and wanted to expedite the decision process. The lie was so blatant it was almost impressive. Vincent had told me explicitly that Nash's approach missed their core values entirely. "I see," I said simply. "I'll be prepared." "Excellent. Oh, and the presentation format has changed as well. Rather than individual pitches, we'll be doing a joint presentation, you and Nash together." This was the trap, forcing me to collaborate with Nash at the last minute, ensuring a disjointed, contradictory pitch that would fail spectacularly. "That seems unusual for a final presentation," I noted. "The client specifically requested to see how our team collaborates," she replied smoothly. "I've already briefed Nash. He'll reach out to coordinate with you today." After hanging up, I sat motionless, processing this development. A joint presentation with no time to prepare, with a colleague who had every reason to undermine me, showcasing contradictory approaches to a client whose real priorities were being ignored. It was elegantly destructive, a perfect professional execution. Nash called 30 minutes later, his tone brisk and businesslike. "Thea says we're presenting together Monday. I've already structured the presentation. You'll handle the relationship management sections. I'll cover investment strategy and returns projections." "That approach doesn't align with what Miller actually wants," I countered. "What Miller wants is irrelevant. What will impress the evaluation committee is what matters." His voice hardened. "Look, I know you didn't ask for this assignment, but I've been working this account for months. Follow my lead, don't contradict me during the presentation, and we'll get through this. And if I have insights that conflict with your approach," his laugh was cold, "then keep them to yourself until after we've secured the account. Once they're signed, you can nurture the relationship however you want." "That's not how this works, Nash. Clients deserve honesty from the beginning." "Honesty doesn't win accounts," he snapped. "Results do. I'm sending you the presentation deck. Review your sections and be ready for a run-through tomorrow afternoon." The presentation he sent was sophisticated but fundamentally flawed, prioritizing aggressive growth strategies while barely mentioning the ethical considerations Vincent had explicitly highlighted as crucial. I closed my laptop, a decision crystallizing. I would attend Monday's presentation, I would stand beside Nash, and I would do exactly what the client needed, regardless of the consequences to my standing with Thea. But Monday's presentation was merely a skirmish. The real battle would come Thursday, when all 14 of my key clients gathered in one room, a meeting Thea didn't yet know existed, for a purpose she couldn't possibly anticipate. My phone chimed with a message from Vincent Miller. "Received troubling call from your director suggesting you're being reassigned. Should I be concerned about Monday?" I stared at the message, another piece of Thea's strategy becoming clear. She was already laying groundwork to explain my imminent failure. "No concerns necessary," I texted back. "Monday will be revealing in ways no one expects." I set my phone aside and opened a fresh document on my laptop. The title at the top read simply, "Client Protection Protocol, Addressing Ethical Concerns Post-Merger." The countdown to Monday had begun. Thea thought she was orchestrating my professional demise. She had no idea I was documenting hers. Monday morning arrived with a stillness that comes before decisive moments. I arrived early, reviewing both Nash's presentation and the alternative approach I'd prepared based on Vincent Miller's actual priorities. Nash found me in the conference room, his confidence palpable. "Ready to follow my lead?" "I'm ready to serve the client's best interests," I replied evenly. His eyes narrowed. "This isn't the time for your relationship philosophy. This is about winning the account." "Is it?" I asked. "Or is it about setting me up to fail?" Something flickered across his face. Discomfort, perhaps even guilt. "This is business, Laine. Nothing personal." It became personal when Thea decided to target me. "Tell me, Did she promise you the Miller account before or after my performance review? His silence was answer enough. The conference room gradually filled. Thea arrived with 4 executives from the Miller Group, but not Vincent. She made introductions, her smile practiced and confident. Vincent sends his regrets, she explained. Unexpected commitment, but he's empowered his team to make the final decision. I nodded, suspicion rising. Vincent had given no indication he would miss this presentation. Another of Thea's manipulations? Nash began confidently, outlining aggressive growth strategies and market opportunities. When he introduced me for the relationship management portion, Thea's smile grew sharp with anticipation. Thank you, Nash, I began, feeling every eye in the room on me. Before discussing relationship management, I'd like to address something fundamental to the Miller Group's identity. Nash stiffened beside me. In my conversations with Vincent Miller, I continued, he emphasized 2 core principles: financial sustainability and ethical responsibility. The strategy we've outlined prioritizes the former while neglecting the latter. Thea's expression froze. The Miller executives leaned forward with sudden interest. Therefore, I've prepared an alternative approach. I connected my laptop to the projector, replacing Nash's slides with mine. This strategy aligns returns with the ethical investment framework the Miller Group has championed for decades. For the next 20 minutes, I presented a completely different vision, one centered on sustainable growth through ethically aligned investments. The Miller team asked engaged questions while Nash sat silent, visibly conflicted. Thea's composure cracked. This contradicts our agreed approach, she interjected. Laine's views don't represent the firm's position. Actually, came a voice from the doorway. They represent exactly what we discussed. Vincent Miller entered, nodding apologetically to his team. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was worse than expected. His eyes met mine briefly, a silent acknowledgement that there had never been a scheduling conflict, only Thea's attempt to prevent his attendance. Miss Harlow's presentation addresses precisely what we've been seeking, Vincent continued, taking a seat. A partner who understands our values, not just our portfolio size. The meeting concluded with the Miller team requesting my complete proposal by Thursday. The same day, I had scheduled my meeting with my 14 key clients. As everyone filed out, Thea gripped my arm. My office. Now. Her office door had barely closed when she turned on me. You directly undermined a colleague and contradicted our firm's strategy. This is grounds for immediate termination. Is it? I asked calmly. Or is this about your failed attempt to discredit me? You're delusional, she snapped. You've been undermining my leadership since day one. No, I've been protecting my clients from your toxic leadership, I corrected. And speaking of clients, I've scheduled a meeting for Thursday. All 14 of my key clients will be attending. Her expression shifted from anger to calculation. What kind of meeting? The kind where we discuss the future, I replied. Their portfolios represent 68% of this firm's revenue. They're concerned about recent changes in management philosophy. Understanding dawned in her eyes. You're threatening to take them elsewhere. I'm giving them complete information to make informed decisions. Something this firm used to value before you arrived. For the first time since I'd known her, Thea looked uncertain. The board won't allow this. The board has been invited, I replied, as has the Miller Group. Vincent was quite interested when I mentioned concerns about ethical advisory practices. Thursday arrived with a tension that permeated the entire firm. The largest conference room had been reserved, security posted discreetly outside. My request, approved by the board chairman after I'd shared selected portions of my documentation. One by one, my clients arrived, collectively representing over $2 billion in managed assets. The board members followed, then Vincent Miller, and 2 of his executives. Thea entered last, her expression carefully neutral, though her eyes burned with contained fury. Once everyone was seated, I began. Thank you all for coming. This meeting was called to address serious concerns about the direction of our firm following the merger. I outlined the systematic changes in client management, the attempts to separate clients from their established advisors, and the prioritization of new acquisitions over client welfare. As I spoke, I distributed folders containing documentation, emails, meeting notes, performance metrics, all telling the same story. The essential question, I concluded, is whether this firm still deserves your trust. Mr. Torres spoke first. I've been with this firm for 22 years. Recent changes have made me question that relationship for the first time. Other clients nodded in agreement, several sharing similar experiences, mysterious calls from new advisors, suggestions to consider more aggressive strategies contrary to their established goals. The board chairman's expression darkened with each testimony. He turned to Thea. "You assured me client relationships were being protected during the transition." "They are," Thea insisted. "We're simply modernizing our approach to better serve client interests." "Without consulting the clients about their interests," Vincent Miller noted dryly. "A concerning pattern we observed during your pursuit of our business." The meeting continued for 2 hours. By its conclusion, 3 things had been established. My clients would remain with the firm only under my direct management. The board would conduct a comprehensive review of post-merger practices, and Thea would take temporary leave effective immediately. 3 weeks later, the board announced a restructuring of the executive team. Thea's resignation was accepted, and a new position was created, Chief Client Advocacy Officer, reporting directly to the board. They offered me the role the same day the Miller Group signed with our firm, specifically requesting me as their primary advisor. My new office overlooks the park. My client list has expanded to include others seeking the relationship-based approach I champion. The culture is slowly healing as the focus returns to client welfare over acquisition targets. Yesterday, Nash stopped by my office. "I wanted to apologize," he said awkwardly. "I got caught up in Thea's vision of success. I forgot why we do this work in the first place." "We all lose perspective sometimes," I replied. "What matters is finding it again." As he turned to leave, he paused. "How did you know you'd win? When you stood up to her that first day, how did you know it wouldn't destroy your career?" I considered the question carefully. I didn't know, but I understood something Thea never did, that real value isn't measured in acquisitions or growth metrics. It's built in trust, maintained through integrity, and proven when it matters most. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't destroying your enemy. It's rebuilding the system they corrupted until there's no place left for their tactics to thrive. If this story resonated with you, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of workplace justice. Have you ever had to stand up to a toxic leader? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might help someone else find their voice when it matters most.